Peace, family. You're listening to the Classroom and the Cell podcast. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill, and I am joined by...
Mumia Abu Jamal.
Man, it's good to hear your voice, man. I know we took a couple of days off. I was over here trying to catch up on work and trying to do some stuff, man. I was thinking about you because I was reading, and a lot of people talk about being scholars and being writers and thinkers and all of that stuff. And I was wondering, what does Mumia read, or how does Mumia read? I know what you read, but how do you read? You know what I'm saying? Like what is your reading practice? First of all, how often do you read? That's the first thing I want to know.
Well, I must confess, not as often as I want to, because other things intercede. There was a time, not that very long ago, when I was on death row, I would read incessantly, and I would only stop for meals or when we had yard, something I had to take a shower or something like that, because you know what that meant was I was reading an average of 2 books a day, and
damn,
yeah, because you know you're locked in 22 and 2. When people on death row or in prison say 22 and 2, what they mean is you only get out that cell for 2 hours a day, and that's 5 days a week. On the row, Saturdays and Sundays, you never left that cell. The other exception, of course, is if someone visits you.
This is a call from
Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Mahanoy.
This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
You know, I read incessantly, and, you know, very good books. You know, a lot of the times I was in school, but even if I wasn't in school, I read for the joy of reading and the joy of learning and the joy of knowing. And that was my bit, man. And, you know, I don't want to say or suggest that I miss those days, those good old days on death row.
I was about to say, man, you saying the downside of death row, the downside of getting off death row is you don't get to read as much.
No, not quite, but you know, if you're in population and you know people are calling you for things, you have different activities you're involved with and all that, so it's a different relationship. So you have to, what I find myself doing is reading and rereading. Because if I put the book down long enough, even though I have a marker on the page, when I go back to the page, I have to reread to find out, in my mind where I was at before. So it takes me longer to read stuff. And, the good thing is when you reread and reread, you see more.
Yeah, for sure.
And one of my committee members, Lewis Gordon, who you know well, remarked during our committee hearing. He said, I said, when I read so-and-so, he said, you don't read. You reread and reread and reread. I said, damn, what does he mean by that? To myself. Now I know, because that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, man. I know you are a student of Franz Fanon, and that's one of them cats you can't read once, you can't read twice.
From
Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Mahanoy.
This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
One of the stories I tell about the Franz Fanon is how lucky the Black Panther Party was to have Bobby Seale in Huey Newton's ear, because Bobby gave him a copy of The Wretched of the Earth, and Huey read it 6 times.
Wow.
6 times. And because, Huey, even though he learned to read late in life, or later in his young life, because by 10th grade, he couldn't read. So he taught himself how to read, and he would read slowly but deeply. He would probe anything he didn't understand. He would reread it until he understood it. So he absorbed the thinkings of Frantz Fanon. And, when you read about the Black Panther Party, the ideology of the party, the ideas of the party in terms of how to organize and who to organize, all of that, a good deal of that, I would say 40% of that is Frantz Fanon.
Wow.
Because he gave us insight in the colonial situation. And we analogize that to the African American situation. In fact, the party would talk about the black colony, right?
Mm.
And you know what? You know who else talked about the black colony?
Who?
Martin Luther King Jr.
the real Martin Luther King Jr.
The real Martin Luther King Jr. And both were correct, of course.
Man, that's a stunning number, man. The other thing, part of why I wanted to ask you that question is to think about your ethic of reading. Before I ask you about the ethic of reading, though, in terms of, tell me a little bit more about what you read now, or how much you read now, because you said you used to read 2 books a day, which is stunning. I used to be impressed when Cornel West would tell me he read 4 or 5 books a week. Anybody know Cornel West know this brother would walk down the street wearing that black suit. Then you see him on TV wearing a black suit. Then you see him at the rally wearing a black suit. I don't know what he wears to the beach, but
but it ain't a black suit.
Look, it might just be
4 or 5 books with him.
But that's it. So when I would be like, why he got all this damn luggage, or why does he carry a bag with him if he wears a suit? And the answer is simple. That's what the books are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but even Cornell, he's still reading 4 or 5 a week. You know what I mean? And you reading 14 a week. What now that you have these other activities, now that you're off the row, at least fast death row, how much do you read now? How much would you say you read in a week now?
I'd be lucky to finish a book in a week. And what I find myself doing is reading anthologies which have small articles in it. I can hear some article, but that article will take me several days, right? Again, because other things intervene. And what I do also, and I've learned to do from many, many years of reading, is take copious notes. When something hits, I'll note the page, sometimes do a direct quote, and sometimes do kind of what this person is meaning as opposed to a word-for-word copying of the text. But I do all those things so that I can, like in most of the books that I'm using, I'll have 10 to 15 scraps of paper, right, in the cover, right, next to the cover. And so I can go to the cover and just go through those notes instead of going to the actual text sometimes. So that saves me time, especially when I'm writing about a subject. And, it's just the way when I write something down, in a sense, it's like it inscribes it in my head, in my brain.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think, you're also a prolific writer, and one day we're going to talk about your writing, but the way people are effective writers, in my experience, particularly as scholars like you, is they have to be deep readers. And so, when I'm in book mode, working on a project, that's sometimes when I'm all in on the books too. So I'll just be writing. If I'm writing a book on abolition, as I have been working on for a couple of years, I'm reading so much about abolition. I'm reading every book. Then every footnote has 10 books to it, and I'm reading them 10 books. And you know how it is, man.
Yeah.
And you can't even you may have written a page, but you've read enough you feel like for centuries, and it's deeply rewarding. But you can find yourself in a hole too of just reading so much. But I love that, But I asked you that question because again, people know you as somebody who writes books. And people will think of me maybe now as somebody, who writes books, but I don't think they always appreciate how much reading has to happen before you even get to the point of writing the book, and how much reading shapes our lives even more than writing. Like I see myself as a writer for sure, but there's a lot of ways that I see myself as a reader more than a writer. The writing is almost like an outgrowth of like I read all this shit. I got to get some of it out. I got ideas. I got to get some of it out. Yeah,
Exactly right. But I think your point, the best point that you have here is, in order to be a good writer. I've told brothers this for years, and they look at me kind of like I'm shining on. But it ain't that at all. Yeah, man, I want to write a book, so and so. And I said, you know what the best training to writing is? What's that? I said, reading. And it's no short. It's no shortcut. Because, and I break down, like tricks and all that. And my thing is, if you read a book and the book just supercharges you, it moves you, try to read it again and find out then why it moves you. What was it that turned you on, right? And you'll learn more from that than from like a book about writing.
Oh, for sure.
You dig? Because,
for sure.
What turns you on is not what's going to turn the next person on.
Right. Right.
Whatever charged you, and you like, damn, I love this book, man. I hated it when I had to end it.
Right.
That's when you said this person has taken hold of you and given you a charge.
It's so interesting because, like, a lot of these young guys want to rap too, and I'm like, they can sort of wrap their minds around the idea of saying, you wouldn't make a rap song unless you had listened to a lot of rap songs, right? Like no one goes in the booth and says, let me spit a verse and they never heard one. No one writes a song without having heard one. And similarly, when it comes to books, it's like you have to learn form and style. You also get ideas. You also want to know what's been said. I mean, I learned a lot about writing from reading you. I'm serious, man. You had a very, the thing that struck me about your writing on all of your books, but especially Live from Death Row and also Jailhouse Lawyers, was
you have 1 minute left.
You were able to get a lot of information you write very short paragraphs. And you're able to get a lot of information in them, but you still don't write these monstrous, 14 sentence paragraphs with 84 commas in it. And it makes your writing so clear and so clean. And I didn't realize why it was so clear and so clean until I thought about it. And then I was like, okay, when I write, I want to write like this sometimes. Sometimes you got to do that the other way. But you gave me a model. But I didn't even know that was possible until I took your writing seriously. You know what I'm saying? At the level of form. But anyway, that's a whole other thing for another time, man. But
let me say this before we get knocked. Think of Tupac Shakur. Tupac Shakur had a library of hundreds of books. He read everything. He read everything.
Yeah.
If you read Michael Eric Dyson's book on Tupac, he breaks down his library. It was extensive.
Thank you for using Securus. Goodbye.
That is very, very true. Tupac's reading ethic was incredible. And Mumia was just referencing Holler If You Hear Me, searching for Tupac Shakur. Holler If You Hear Me, searching for Tupac Shakur, which is Michael Eric Dyson's best-selling book on Tupac, it's an amazing book, and there's a whole chapter on Tupac's writing, or reading, excuse me, which again informs his writing, and that's what Mumia is talking about. Mumia is one of the most profound writers and readers of a generation, man. So to get some insight on what inspires him and what gets his wheels turning as a creator and as a writer and as a reader is pretty dope. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, family, thank you for listening to the Classroom and the Cell. New episodes are coming up constantly, so make sure you check us out. You can grab it right on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. Just go over to Marc Lamont Hill on YouTube, type that in. You can get all of the Classroom and the Cell podcast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you like what you're listening to. And, of course, if you're so inclined, hit the join button and become part of the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. That allows us to keep the podcast going among other projects, other original content. Just keep checking us out, and we'll keep being here. Love y'all, family. We'll talk soon. On the move.